one of the things that changed my mind on a little bit, and I tried to give more nuance to what they were saying, not because of the reasons they provided, because they provided reasons based off of evolutionary biology. And then I was thinking about, okay, if this is the case, how does the culture at large accept this as well? And then thinking about that, and I'm talking about like the polyamory stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
at first, I was like, yeah, people should be able to do whatever they want to do. I still believe that. Um, it doesn't mean that the things that people want to do are are healthy. Like if someone wants to do 10 lines of cocaine, go ahead and let them do it. You know, it's their body, their choice. I think it comes down to me trying not to be a hypocrite. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying is what kind of standards would I want for either my daughter? You know, when I'm thinking about that, is like, would I want her to be in a polyamorous thing or a thing where she's not has an exclusive boyfriend or you know something like that? You know, when she's older, and I can pretty much say I'd be pretty uncomfortable if she wasn't pursuing like a standard relationship.
But does
And I
that
think
mean
that's
that you shouldn't allow her to do it though? I mean, to an
not saying you
extent, I
shouldn't
guess.
allow her. I'm just saying when I'm weighting things, I'm saying talking about preferences, right? Like when she
Mm-hmm.
becomes 18, doesn't really matter what I say. Like I could try to influence her, but you know, they're their own persons at that time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah, I get that. I get that. You're allowed to. There's a difference between having preferences and administrating in them in some sort of authoritarian way, of course.
yeah. So my preference would be for her to have a traditional monogamous relationship, you know, whatever her sexuality is going to be. Like, I'm not gonna, I'm not going to be that parent that's like, oh, you know, um, I can't, yeah, you know, I'm going to accept whatever her sexuality is.
Not going to follow one of Jordan Peterson's rules from 12 Rules for Life, which is don't let your children do anything that makes you not like them.
Yeah, I think that's dumb,
Yeah,
but it's basically be an authoritarian to your children,
yeah,
and even if it causes them psychological trauma, mold them into whatever you want to mold them. You
yeah,
know, it kind of reminds me of Donald Trump's dad. It's like the kind of advice that Donald Trump's father pretty much followed to a T.
yeah. And then, well, look how Trump turned out.
Right. Um, no, I wouldn't follow that. I would prefer, you know, because we're talking about social acceptance. I know it's less worrisome here in our country. There are other countries where social acceptance is very, very, very important. To me, it's not that important, but it's more important probably to my wife to have my daughter be socially accepted. And I don't know. I'm just thinking about if she had to raise kids and she's trying to do this weird polyamorous thing. I don't know if our society at this point accepts that and makes it beneficial. Like, I know, of course, I'm going to be accepting about whatever path she chooses because I want to be supportive, but I also do recognize that certain paths would be more difficult. And I think polyamory, like, that is not, I don't think that's like I think that's more of a choice thing rather than a born with it thing.
Oh
Like a more of
yeah,
a
that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't just not become gay, you know what I mean? Um, but I think polyamory and the pursuance of that is mostly a choice. Like I can't think of it as like, oh, I was born to be polyamorous, and if I go against that, it's going to hurt me psychologically. I think you can make a choice that's more acceptable with society. And that's just
You mean just theoretically speaking, if someone wanted to be polyamorous, they could just choose to be monogamous anyway?
um well, I'm talking about specifically like I think you don't choose your sexuality. I think that's kind of like a thing that you're wired to. It's wired in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if somebody wants to do a threesome or whatever, that's not something like, oh, I must always do threesomes. Like I'm biologically wired to do threesomes and threesomes only, or that I can't function. I don't. I kind of would group polyamory in that kind of category there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
But
makes
there's
sense.
probably
I
people
think
that are
the
naturally polyamorous, and those are kind of the people that just have trouble staying in monogamous relationships. People who just cheat and cheat and cheat. Those are probably the
yeah,
type of people that should be um, polyamorous.
it seems
There's people that
to
can't
like
handle monogamy. That's fine.
yeah,
Those people
yeah.
should be polyamorous relationships if they can't handle it.
Like
But I think most people can't.
it seems to me based on what I've what little I've heard from a few polyamorous people is it's either that that they like relationships so much that they want to it's kind of like they want to have multiple monogamous relationships but they're not monogamous because they I don't know they feel like they have so much love to give or something like that and there are different ways that people do it too like there are also people who are a couple who just likes to every once in a while have a threesome like you were talking about or maybe they're a couple and they like to just kind of have a standard fuck buddy who has threesomes with them or something like that. It depends on whether you're looking at it in terms of
That sounds
sex or
just
in
more like
terms
a
of
kink.
relationships.
Yeah, because there's
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
kink, and then there's like, oh, I have like full blown relationships with these people.
yeah.
Um, so if we're talking about the full blown relationships, to me that just seems like way too much time consumption there. Like I couldn't.
That's why some polyamorous people say it's not this fun carefree thing. It requires a hell of a lot of work and it's hard and we wouldn't recommend it for most people. That's what those evolutionary psychologists who are polyamorous named Diana Fleischman and Jeffrey Miller have said about it.
Yeah, it just seems too much work to make it work when it's hard enough to make like a monogamous relationship work.
Yeah,
And it's
even
like
that's a lot of
Jesus
work
Christ.
sometimes.
Yeah, so it's like fuck. I kind of get what they're getting at in this book. But yeah, I think I have preferences. I would like those preferences for my daughter, you know, but outside of that, people do what they do. I wouldn't be authoritarian about non like non-familial connections,
Right.
and telling them what they should or shouldn't do. Um, the only time I guess I would is if they would like cry on my shoulder and start complaining about how crappy their polyamorous relationships are going. Say, hey, why don't you just try a monogamous one for a while and try to concentrate on one person instead of trying to please like two or three.
And that
So
sounds like, especially if you're in multiple polyamorous relationships, and you're the average person perhaps who's working 2 or 3 jobs and you have kids, how the fuck can you manage all of that?
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
I only have one kid, and goddamn, um, I don't have a lot of time for myself.
yeah.
So I can imagine how you have all these different relationships and then manage like raising kids. And then you have like these kids that have the possibility of being ostracized or made fun of. How do you show up to the soccer game? Like, oh, that's my dad, and that's my other dad, and that's my other mom. It's like, yeah, that's not gonna. I don't think your child will be able to go through life easily because of the choices the adult made. You're putting your child through this, and I think it's a little selfish to do that to your kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, well, especially because our culture has normalized monogamy so much, so it would seem so abnormal to a kid to be that way. I mean, I guess the only way I could look at this charitably is that you could look at it similarly to two gay parents or two lesbian parents have to
Hmm.
explain why they're different to what's seen as normal for this society to their kids. But then again, also, like you were talking about, the
Yeah,
being polyamorous is more of a choice than being gay or being lesbian too.
yeah, it's much more accepted, I would say, now than it has been in the past. Like, I remember this girl I knew from high school, and she had two moms. So I didn't even think about it like at all. And this is like in the 90s. But yeah, I know our culture, it's well, depending on where you live, of course. Like, if you live in a deep red rural area, you're not going to have an easy as a time as living in a big city. But at least there are places that you can go to where you have acceptance within this country, anyway.
Yeah,
But
this country too.
yeah, but um, yeah, that's what I mean by social acceptance. Like, if you are gay and you want to try to raise a family in a deeply red anti-gay area, um, I would suggest not doing that at all. Move. Just for the mental health benefits of being around accepting people. Like, I can't imagine raising a child in that environment where there was very little acceptance when it came to
Yeah,
that.
might be a better idea to live in a big city where you can
Right,
find some similar sort of social groups.
right. Well, not even similar, like just social groups that accept
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
like that don't. I know there's probably still going to be a little weirdness coming up in school and stuff. Yeah, just from like really, asshole bully people who are usually those people tend to be super insecure. So they got to
Oh yeah.
lash out on other people and point out things about them so that they can feel better about themselves. This is going to happen wherever you go. I just see it less like, there's a bully, but then you still have widespread social acceptance for
Yeah,
that
bullies
in
are
particular.
everywhere.
Yeah, they're always going to be everywhere. So that's what I mean, really, is that socially, culturally, we're not there yet with this polyamorous stuff. Um, So I don't think it would work. Wouldn't work well for a kid. I don't think. This isn't what's the name of this is not Captain Holden. Like we're not in the future where you can have like 8 parents
Yeah.
like Captain Holden did.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. And I think the psychological impacts, like just thinking of trans, like if you compare like trans people here to trans people like in Thailand, the trans people here are not socially accepted like they are in Thailand.
Yeah.
So their suicide rate is a lot higher. That's
Yeah.
because they're not socially accepted.
Yeah,
So
whether
I wouldn't want
like
to.
whether a trans person is even open about it all the time in public depends on the person too. Like I've known some trans people who are open about it and dress like the opposite gender all the time, and then there are some who live life or go to work as a man and then pretend to be a woman the rest of the time with their friends or vice versa.
Hmm. Yeah, they probably they present as a gay person at work, and then outside of work is when they dress up like as the opposite gender.
Yeah, probably
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, yeah. So the acceptance is just not there yet.